Before we start, tell me where you're listening from, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next tale. The first time he kissed me, I was pressed against a brick wall with rain falling around us like a curtain, his hand sliding up my waist beneath my jacket. And I couldn't remember the last time someone had looked at me like I was something worth wanting instead of something worth hiding. But I'm getting ahead of myself, because 3 weeks before that kiss, I was just a woman in a coffee shop, trying very hard not to be noticed by anyone, especially not by him. It was the kind of Portland morning that made you feel like the sky had been holding its breath for too long. Fog spread low across the street, soft rain weaving through it like silver threads. The windows of the neighborhood café were streaked with condensation, each droplet creeping slowly downward as if the world were melting. I sat in my usual seat by the window, pretending to read a book I'd owned for 3 years and never made it past chapter 7. My tea sat cooling beside me, untouched. My glasses fogged whenever I leaned too close to the window. My hair frizzed in 27 directions. I looked like a woman who did everything she could not to be seen, which made what happened next feel impossible. The bell over the cafe door chimed, a soft, familiar sound that usually meant nothing. Just another customer, another stranger to avoid eye contact with. But this time, the air shifted in a way that made my skin prickle with awareness before I even looked up. He walked in, a younger man, maybe 24 or 25, rain dotting his dark curls and clinging to the shoulders of his denim jacket. His backpack looked heavy, weighed down with textbooks or maybe a laptop. His sneakers squeaked faintly against the cafe floor. He scanned the room in a quick sweep, his gaze passing over the couples at the front table, the 2 students whispering over their laptops, the elderly man who came every morning for a blueberry muffin. Then his eyes landed on me, not glanced, not skimmed, landed, and the moment stretched just long enough to feel like a mistake in the universe's programming. I pretended to be engrossed in my book, even though I hadn't absorbed a single word in the last 10 minutes. When I dared to look up again through my lashes, he hadn't looked away. His expression wasn't mocking or confused or accidentally curious. It was gentle, intentional, like he saw something in me, something I hadn't recognized in myself yet. My stomach tightened, not the flutter of attraction, not at first, something colder, older, more familiar. Don't trust attention. Attention is danger. That sentence had lived in my body since I was 13, carved into my bones by years of learning that when someone noticed me, it was never for good reasons. So I dropped my gaze again, the old armor returning automatically, locking into place like muscle memory. People who never experience school bullying think it lives in the past, that it stops affecting you once you move away. Cut your hair, grow older, get a job, build a life. They don't understand that it settles inside you like sediment at the bottom of a glass. Shake the glass even slightly, and everything turns cloudy again. When I was 12, a group of kids taped a photo of me to the girls' bathroom door. They'd drawn horns and a mustache on my face. Who would date this was scribbled beneath it in thick black marker. When I was 14, a boy announced loudly in the cafeteria, "Damn, Alina, did your parents pay you to stay home today because you're hurting my eyes?" The laughter that followed still echoes in me sometimes. Quiet, but sharp, like glass grinding against glass. Years went by and I became an adult, moved to Portland, landed a quiet job at a local bookstore where I could disappear into stacks and recommendations without having to be looked at too closely. I made friends, gentle ones, who understood my boundaries, but kept my heart wrapped tight, edges taped shut, protected. Attention still felt like a trap. Flirting felt like mockery. Being seen felt like exposure, like standing naked under fluorescent lights while people pointed and whispered. So when the younger man in the cafe kept looking at me, my chest filled with the same old warning. He's laughing at you. He's messing with you. You're the joke, he'll tell his friends later. Look at this older woman who thought I was actually interested. The problem was, he didn't look like he was laughing. And that confusion was its own kind of threat. More dangerous than mockery, because it made me want to believe something I knew better than to trust. The next day, I expected the moment to fade. People sometimes stare without meaning to. Maybe he thought he recognized me. Maybe I had something on my face. Maybe his eyes were just wandering and the universe wanted to mess with me. But the universe wasn't done. Not even close. 3 days later, I saw him again, at the grocery store, of all places. I was picking through apples, trying to find ones without bruises, my hair pulled into a messy bun I hadn't checked in the mirror. My hoodie stained with coffee from rushing out the door that morning. I looked like a before photo in a makeover reel. The kind they show you to prove how much better you could look if you just tried harder. I reached for an apple at the same time someone else did. Our hands brushed, and I jumped back like I'd touched a hot pan, an automatic response I couldn't control. "Sorry," I muttered, not looking up. "No, I'm sorry," he said, voice warm and soft in a way that made my chest tighten. "You can take it." I recognized his voice instantly. It was him, the man from the café. And when I finally looked up, his eyes widened slightly in recognition before his whole face softened into a smile. Small, nervous, real, the kind of smile that doesn't know it's being watched. I grabbed the apple and mumbled thanks, fleeing down the next aisle like it was a fire escape. My heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. Coincidence, I told myself while pretending to study pasta sauce labels without seeing them. Just coincidence. Portland is small. People run into each other all the time. But coincidence doesn't account for how he looked at me. Like he saw something familiar, something he'd been searching for. 2 days later, it was the library. I was shelving returns in the quiet fiction wing where no one ever went unless they needed to cry or find themselves. Rain tapping the windows like impatient fingers wanting to be let in. When I turned the corner with my cart of books, he was standing there, brows drawn in concentration, studying a book like it held the secret to the universe, or at least the answer to some question he'd been carrying for too long. He looked up when he felt me, not heard me, felt me, like my presence had shifted the air in the room. Our eyes locked, again, too long, too real, too charged with something I didn't have a name for yet. "Oh," he said softly, his voice almost reverent. "Hi." He said it like he was happy to see me, like running into me wasn't an accident, but a gift, and the thought alone made my lungs compress. "Hi," I said, barely audible, the words scraping past the tightness in my throat. He didn't approach, didn't intrude, didn't do any of the things men usually do when they think they have an opening. He just looked at me, waiting to see if I was comfortable, giving me space to decide what happened next. Which made me wildly uncomfortable in a completely different way. Because kindness from strange men felt more threatening than aggression. At least aggression I knew how to handle. I slipped past him, my hands shaking as I put books on the shelf in completely the wrong order. Fiction mixing with nonfiction, authors out of sequence, my usual precision abandoned. From the corner of my eye I saw him hover, unsure if he should speak to me. His posture wasn't confident, it was hesitant, as if he feared I was the one who might not like him, as if he was the one who needed to be careful not to scare me away. That made no sense, not in any world I knew. Not in any reality where a younger, attractive man notices an older, invisible woman and means it sincerely. A week of accidental crossings followed, each one feeling less like coincidence and more like the universe had decided to write us into the same story, whether we wanted it or not. The bus stop where we both waited in silence, standing 3 feet apart, but connected by the weight of things unsaid. The corner bakery where he held the door open for me and I mumbled thanks without meeting his eyes. The crosswalk by the park where we ended up walking the same direction for 2 blocks before. I deliberately turned down a street I didn't need just to break the spell. He never approached, never pushed, never made me feel hunted or cornered or like I owed him anything. But he noticed me every single time, and that spark of recognition in his face, that soft brightening when he saw me, I didn't trust it, didn't trust myself, didn't trust that anything good could come from being seen. What would you think if someone younger kept noticing you? Pulling toward you like gravity you didn't ask for? Would it feel like flattery or danger, like possibility or a trap waiting to snap shut? On a quiet Thursday morning, I went to the cafe early, hoping to avoid seeing him again. My hoodie oversized and shapeless, my hair damp from the rain, my mood low and defensive. I opened my laptop to answer emails and pretend to be productive while actually just staring at the screen and seeing nothing. 10 minutes later, the bell rang, and I didn't have to look. I felt it. The shift in air pressure, the way my body went on alert before my brain caught up. He was there. I had the terrible urge to hide under the table like a child playing a game no one else knew the rules to. He ordered tea, his voice low and polite as he spoke to the barista, and then he turned, scanning the room until his eyes found me. His face lit up, bright at first, then softened like he didn't want to scare me, like he was learning to read my fear and adjust himself accordingly. As he approached my table, I felt my breath catch, two opposing forces pulling at me with equal strength. Please don't talk to me. Please talk to me. Please don't see me. Please don't stop seeing me. All those thoughts tangled into an impossible knot I couldn't untie. He stopped beside my table, close enough that I could smell rain and something clean. Maybe soap or shampoo, something simple and masculine that made my stomach flip. "Hi," he said softly, his voice cautious, like he knew I was a bird that might fly away if he moved too fast. And then he added, almost shyly, his eyes warm and a little uncertain, "I'm Jonah." My heart thudded painfully against my ribs, each beat like a fist demanding I pay attention, demanding I acknowledge this moment was real. I swallowed, my throat dry. "Hi," his eyes sparkled with something hopeful, something that looked dangerously like genuine interest. Do you mind if I sit?" My throat closed up, panic surged bright and choking, all those old memories flooding me at once like a dam breaking. Laughter in hallways, whispers behind lockers, someone saying she really thinks he likes her. Oh my God, can you imagine? The cruelty dressed up as disbelief, as if wanting me was the punchline. I choked on breath, on fear, on the impossibility of this moment being real. "I have to go," I blurted, scrambling for my stuff, my laptop nearly sliding off the table in my haste. "Oh, okay." His face fell, but he nodded, stepping back immediately to give me space. "Sorry, didn't mean to make you uncomfortable." I didn't hear the rest. I was already halfway out the door, my chest tight, my vision blurring at the edges. Outside, I gripped the railing by the steps and inhaled the cold, wet air, trying to force oxygen past the tightness in my lungs. Shame washed over me in waves, hot and suffocating. Why couldn't I just be normal? Why did kindness feel like a threat? Why couldn't I accept that maybe, just maybe, someone saw something in me worth approaching? That night, I lay on my bed scrolling mindlessly through Instagram, the algorithm doing what it does best, showing me things adjacent to my life without quite touching it. A photo of Powell's bookstore appeared in my feed, tagged with people browsing inside, and I saw him instantly, Jonah. He stood by a display of poetry books, awkwardly half smiling at the camera, his posture slightly hunched like he wasn't quite comfortable being photographed. The tag said Norites. I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the screen, then tapped his profile before I could talk myself out of it. And what I found shook me. Old photos, years back, a boy with braces and a nervous smile, clothes that didn't fit right, hair too long and unkempt, eyes downcast like he was used to not being seen, or worse, being seen and mocked. Comments from classmates littered the older posts. "Wow, you changed. Can't believe this is the same Joe. Bro went from nerd to model." Each comment a little knife, reminding him of what he used to be. Not model, I thought, scrolling slowly through the transformation. Just grown, just healed, just someone who finally grew into himself. I scrolled further, photos of him scribbling in notebooks at coffee shops, photos with only one or two friends instead of large groups. Photos where he didn't meet the camera's gaze, where his smile looked uncertain, like he wasn't sure he had permission to take up space. A memory hit me like a slap, sharp and sudden. I knew that posture, that angle of chin, that way of shrinking yourself down to avoid being a target. He had been bullied, he had survived it, carried the scars of it in his body the same way I did. Maybe that's why he noticed me. Maybe he recognized the quiet armor I carried, the careful way I moved through the world like I was trying not to disturb it. Something cracked inside me, not painful but tender, like ice breaking under spring sun. He wasn't a joke waiting to happen. He wasn't playing with me. He wasn't setting me up for humiliation. He might have been just as scared as I was, just as uncertain, just as afraid of being hurt again. The next morning, the rain was falling in a gentler rhythm, softer somehow, like the city was exhaling after holding its breath. I went to the café again, not to hide, not to run, to apologize, to try, to see if maybe I could be braver than my fear. When I walked in, he was there already, sitting at a table near the window, stirring his tea slowly, looking like he was trying not to look for me, but failing. But when he lifted his eyes and saw me standing there, he froze, his spoon stilling mid-stir, his whole body going tense with surprise. slowly, cautiously, like he was afraid sudden movement might make me disappear. He smiled. "Hi, this time I didn't run. Can I sit?" I asked, my voice small but steady. His eyebrows lifted in surprise, his whole face brightening like sunrise breaking through fog. "Yes, please." I sat across from him, my hands trembling in my lap, my heart beating so hard I was sure he could hear it. "I'm sorry I ran yesterday," I said quietly, forcing myself to meet his eyes. His shoulders relaxed, tension draining from him. "It's okay, I figured I came on too strong." "No," I said quickly. "You didn't. I just panic easily. It's not you, it's me, and I hate how cliché that sounds, but it's true." He nodded like he understood. Not pitying, not condescending, just knowing in a way that made my chest ache. "I panic too," he said softly. "I know it doesn't look like it. People look at me now and assume confidence. But that's not who I learned to be. That's just who I'm trying to become." I hesitated, then took the leap. "I saw some of your old photos." He winced, a flicker of old pain crossing his face. "Oh God." "Not in a bad way," I said quickly, leaning forward slightly. "Just I recognized something. I recognized you, the way you used to hold yourself, the way you looked at the camera, like you weren't sure you deserved to be in the frame." He looked at me, really looked, and something warm and vulnerable flickered in his eyes. "You have that look too," he whispered, "the one people get when they've had to survive themselves, when they've learned to make themselves small to stay safe." My breath caught. No one had ever put it into words like that before. He continued, voice soft and careful. "That's why I noticed you. You walk like someone who thinks she should be invisible, but somehow still shines through everything anyway. Like light through a crack in a wall." I swallowed hard, my throat tight.
"You don't even know me."
"Not yet," he said, his eyes holding mine with gentle intensity. "But I want to." Something unspoken settled between us, a pull neither of us had words for yet, a gravity we were both trying to resist and lean into at the same time. He leaned in slightly, not enough to crowd me, just enough to let me feel the warmth of him, the solidity of his presence. "My friends tease me," he said, a slight flush creeping up his neck. "They say I always fall for older women." My lungs stalled, the air in the room suddenly feeling too thick. "Fall." He flushed deeper, the color spreading across his cheekbones. "I mean get interested, admire, like whatever the word is that doesn't make me sound like a creep." "And why older women?" I asked, my voice coming out smaller than I intended. He rubbed the back of his neck, a nervous gesture that made him look younger and more vulnerable. "Because they feel safe, calmer, like they're done playing games, and because they know who they are, or at least they're closer to knowing than I am." I laughed, soft and brittle. "I don't know who I am." His eyes softened, his whole expression gentling. "I think you're kinder to others than you are to yourself, and that's something I understand too well." Heat rose in my chest, spreading through my body like warmth from a fire I'd been standing too far from for too long. He wasn't flirting, not in the shallow, performative way I'd learned to distrust. He was speaking gently, like every word needed care, like I needed care, like he understood that approaching me required the same caution you'd use with something precious and fragile. And for the first time in years, I wanted someone to care, wanted to believe that maybe I was worth the effort. He took a small breath, like he was preparing himself, gathering courage. "Can I ask you something, and you can say no?" I stiffened automatically, old defenses rising. "What? Why did you look scared when I said hi yesterday?" I stared down at my hands, my fingers twisting themselves into knots, fidgeting with nothing. Words rose to the surface, then sank again like stones. I wasn't used to sharing myself, not the real parts, not the cracked ones underneath the armor I'd spent years building. He waited, not demanding, not impatient, just present in a way that felt both terrifying and safe. Because of that patience, because of the gentle steadiness in his gaze, I wanted to answer him honestly. "I thought you might be messing with me," I whispered. His eyebrows pulled together in confusion. "Messing with you how?" I swallowed, forcing the words out past the tightness in my throat. "The way you looked at me, it felt like attention. And when I was younger, attention wasn't kind. People pretended to flirt to get a laugh, or said things just to watch me react. I learned very early that when someone looks at you like they see something, it's usually because they're about to make fun of it." His whole body went still, tension coiling through him like he was physically restraining himself from reaching for me. "Alina," he said gently, my name soft in his mouth, "I would never do that to you." My throat tightened, tears pricking at the corners of my eyes. "I know you wouldn't," I said, though I wasn't sure I believed it fully yet. But my body reacts before my brain catches up. I go into defense mode without thinking. He nodded slowly, absorbing every word like they mattered, like I mattered. "That makes sense, really. I get that more than you know." A beat of silence, comfortable somehow, despite the heavy things we were saying. Then he added, quietly, voice dropping lower, "I used to flinch when people got too close, especially girls I liked, because I always thought they were setting me up for something, or that they'd laugh if they knew how much I liked them." "You?" I asked, genuinely surprised. "Why?" He hesitated, then shrugged with a helpless little smile that broke my heart. "Because for a long time I was the punchline." The way he said it, calm and factual, with no bitterness, broke something tender inside me. "So," he continued softly, leaning forward slightly, "I'm not approaching you because I think you owe me attention, or because I think it's funny. I'm approaching you because I want to know you. And because every time I see you, something inside me goes still, like I've been holding my breath all day and didn't realize it until you walked in." My breath caught with a sharp, unexpected ache, his words settling into me like warmth seeping into cold hands. "Why me?" I whispered. His lips lifted in a shy, uneven smile. "Because you look like you feel things deeply, and I'm drawn to that, to people who haven't learned to numb themselves yet." He looked down then, fingers tracing the rim of his mug nervously. "And because you're beautiful," he added under his breath, so quietly I almost didn't hear it. The words still felt like a bruise to me, like something that hurt to touch. "Please don't say that if you don't mean it." He looked up sharply, his eyes meeting mine with sudden intensity. "I mean it more than you think." I suddenly realized I hadn't properly introduced myself, that we'd been circling each other for weeks without this basic exchange. "I'm Alina," I said softly. His smile widened, bright and genuine, lighting up his features like sunrise. "Alina, that suits you." My cheeks warmed despite myself. How it sounds soft and strong, like you know how to survive things people don't even notice, like there's steel wrapped in silk. My chest tightened, emotion welling up. "You see too much." "No," he said, leaning just a little forward, close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from him. "I notice what you hide. That's different." I felt his words like a warm thumb brushing over a bruise. Not painful, but tender, acknowledging something I'd been carrying alone for too long. A few more customers entered. The espresso machine hissed and gurgled. The rain softened outside, falling in thin streaks across the windows. We sat there, the air between us thick and careful, charged with things we were both afraid to name. I kept tracing patterns in the condensation on my mug, needing something to do with my hands. He kept glancing at my fingers like he wanted to touch them, but didn't know if he had permission, didn't know if I'd flinch away. After a long, comfortable silence, he said quietly, voice almost hesitant, "Can I do something kind of vulnerable?" My stomach fluttered, nerves and anticipation mixing. "What?" He inhaled, bracing himself like he was about to jump off something high. "Can we just sit here for a minute without talking? I haven't been able to breathe right all week, but when I'm near you it feels easier." I froze. No one had ever said something like that to me, at least not without an agenda or irony stitched into the words, not with this kind of raw honesty. So I nodded, unable to speak past the emotion in my throat. We sat in silence, and I felt it. The shift, not dramatic, not cinematic, just warm. Like someone had pressed their hand against the coldest part of me, and was patiently waiting for the ice to melt. I started the conversation this time, needing to break the silence before I drowned in it. "So you write." I gestured toward his Instagram handle. "Jonah writes." He laughed softly, self-deprecating. "Bad poetry, worse short stories, but yeah." "What do you write about?" He hesitated, his fingers still tracing patterns on his mug. "People who think they're unlovable." My breath hitched, the words hitting too close. "Why?" He rubbed the back of his neck, embarrassed but honest. "Because I used to be sure no one would ever want me, but then I grew up a little. Grew into my face, I guess. Puberty finally delivered its delayed gift." He said it lightly, but I felt the tremor beneath his humor, the old wounds still tender. And suddenly people wanted me. Still don't trust it sometimes. His eyes found mine again, holding steady. You looked at me like you didn't trust it either, he said quietly. My throat tightened. I couldn't deny it. Is it the age thing? He asked gently, giving me permission to name it. That's part of it, I admitted. What's the other part? Me, I whispered, the word barely audible. I'm the other part. He sat back, studying me with a softness that felt too sharp to bear, like he was seeing through layers I didn't know I had. Alina, he said, voice low and steady. What you see when you look in the mirror, it isn't what I see when I look at you. My eyes stung, tears threatened. You barely know me. Maybe, he said, but I know that sometimes you hide behind your hair when you're overwhelmed. And you tap your thumb against your mug when you're anxious. And you hold your breath when you think someone's going to hurt you. He paused, eyes warming with something that looked like affection. And I know that every time you look up, I hope you're looking for me. My heart slammed into my ribs, each beat painful and exhilarating at once. I'm not used to being wanted, I whispered, the confession scraping out of me. He nodded, his expression soft and understanding. I'm not used to wanting someone who feels out of my league. My head jerked up, shock flooding through me. Out of your what? He gave an awkward, sheepish grin that made him look younger. You carry yourself like someone older than 32, like someone who knows more than me. I can't explain it. You feel grounded, like a place instead of a person. Something inside me trembled at his words. Not a person to be mocked or dismissed or made into a joke. A place to rest in, to return to feel safe. I wanted to cry. At one point I mentioned, haltingly and with my eyes fixed on my mug, the bullying I'd endured, the years of learning that attention meant pain. He didn't flinch away, didn't pity me, didn't try to fix it with empty platitudes. He just listened, his whole body oriented toward me like I was the only thing that mattered in that moment. And when I finished, cheeks burning with shame and exposure, he said gently, I started therapy 2 years ago. Not because I was broken, but because I realized I deserved to stop living like I was still being bullied. I blinked, surprised. You really think therapy would help me? He hesitated, then nodded carefully. Only if you want it, only because you deserve to feel safe inside your own head, not because there's anything wrong with you. I wasn't offended. It felt like kindness, like someone offering a warm coat on a freezing day, like he wanted me to have tools I didn't know existed. Okay, I whispered. Maybe I'll try, he smiled, the kind that starts small and grows across the face like blooming light, transforming his whole expression. I'd be proud of you if you did. My heart swayed, unsteady and overwhelmed. No one had ever said something like that to me, offered pride before I'd even done anything to earn it. He finished his tea. I finished nothing, not my drink, not my racing heart, not the 100 questions spinning through my mind like leaves in wind. Finally he leaned back, eyes flicking toward the window where the rain had eased into a thin mist. Do you want to walk a bit? He asked, his voice tentative. It's not raining as hard anymore. My breath caught. Not a date, not even a plan, just a walk, just more time together, just the possibility of something I was still too afraid to name. I nodded. He stood, slipping on his damp jacket, the fabric clinging to his shoulders in a way that made me notice his body properly for the first time, the breadth of him, the way he moved with careful grace. I rose too, clutching my bag strapped tightly as he held the door open for me, his hand steady on the frame. Outside, the air was cold but gentle, the pavement shimmering under the streetlights, reflecting the world back at itself in watery fragments. We walked side by side, our steps slow and measured, like neither of us knew how to move forward too quickly without breaking whatever spell we were under, whatever fragile thing was forming between us. At one point our hands brushed, just barely, and I felt it in every nerve, a spark that traveled up my arm and settled in my chest like captured lightning. He didn't grab my hand, didn't push, didn't assume. He just let the moment linger, giving me space to decide what I wanted. And then, very lightly, his fingers brushed mine again, more intentionally this time, a question asked in touch instead of words. My breath stuttered, but I didn't pull away. And that small act of not retreating felt like the bravest thing I'd done in years. The sidewalk was quiet, lined with small shops and glowing windows, rain-soaked leaves clinging to the edges of the curb like they'd been painted there. Jonah slowed his pace, turning toward me slightly, his expression uncertain. "Can I ask you something?" I nodded, my throat too tight for words. "Do I scare you?" The honesty of the question, the vulnerability in it, nearly unspooled me completely. "Yes," I whispered, "but not because you're dangerous, because you're kind, and I don't know how to trust that yet." His expression softened with something deep and aching, something that made my chest hurt with how much he seemed to understand. "That's okay," he said softly. "We can go slow." Slow? I liked the sound of that word, liked the promise of it, the patience implicit in those 4 letters. We kept walking, and every few steps our hands brushed again, each touch accidental or maybe not, sending shivers through me that had nothing to do with the cold. It was the softest kind of gravity, and I was slowly, inevitably, leaning toward him. When the rain grew heavier, we ducked under the awning of a closed florist shop, the air beneath it smelling faintly of soil and wet, earthy and sweet. He stood close enough to feel his body heat radiating toward me, close enough that if I leaned just slightly forward, my forehead might touch his chest. He looked down at me, watching my breathing, careful not to overwhelm me, every movement deliberate and controlled. "Are you okay?" he asked softly, his voice low and rough at the edges. I swallowed, my pulse racing. "Yes, I think so." "You don't have to be brave," he murmured. "I'm not going to rush you." But despite his promise, the tension between us wasn't easing. It was building, slow and steady and intense in a way that made my heart pound against my ribs like it was trying to escape. My gaze dipped to his lips without meaning to, tracing the curve of them, and his breath, just slightly, just enough for me to notice, just enough to tell me he felt this too. He lifted a hand, slow and deliberate, telegraphing every movement so I could stop him if I wanted, and brushed a loose strand of hair behind my ear, his fingers grazing my cheek with warmth that made my skin tingle. I nearly stopped breathing. "Alina," he whispered, my name turning warm and intimate in his mouth. "I don't want to scare you away, but I need you to know something." I leaned in unconsciously, drawn by the gravity of his voice. "What?" "I've wanted to touch you like this since the moment I saw you in the café." My knees weakened, heat flooding through me. He added, voice dropping lower, rougher, "And I'm trying, really trying, not to cross a line you're not ready for." My chest tightened with want and fear, tangled so tightly I couldn't separate them. "Jonah," I whispered, "I'm scared, but I don't want you to stop." His eyes darkened with relief and something else, something hungry and restrained, something that made my whole body go warm. The rain outside softened again, the world fading into steady white noise. We stood there beneath the awning like the sidewalk had shrunk to just our 2 bodies and the thin, charged space of air between them. He stepped an inch closer, slow enough for me to step back, giving me every chance to retreat, but I didn't. I stayed, rooted by something stronger than fear. My hand brushed against his. He didn't move, didn't force anything. Just let our fingers linger, touching barely, intimately, like we were learning a new language through skin. "Can I hold your hand?" he asked softly. Not a command, not an assumption, a question that gave me all the power. I nodded, unable to speak. His fingers slid between mine, gentle and warm and steady, and suddenly my whole body felt different, lighter, trembling, aware of every point where we connected. He squeezed my hand once, a small reassurance, then let his thumb sweep over the back of my knuckles in slow, deliberate strokes that made heat pool low in my stomach. It wasn't, not exactly, but it was more intimate than anything I'd felt in years, this simple act of being held without fear. My breath shook, coming out uneven. "It's okay," he murmured, his voice like velvet. "You can breathe." I didn't even realize I had been holding it again. His fingers threaded between mine felt wrong in all the right ways. Too warm, too sincere, too steady for someone who was supposed to be just a stranger in a coffee shop. Just someone passing through my carefully constructed solitary life. The rain softened again, turning into quiet mist, but neither of us moved from beneath the awning. Stepping outside this little bubble would ruin something delicate, something forming between us like condensation on glass, visible but fragile. Jonah watched me as if he needed to memorize every blink, every tremble, every breath I let out, like I might disappear if he looked away. "You're still shaking," he whispered. "I know," I said quietly. I can't help it. He nodded, his thumb still brushing the back of my hand in slow grounding arcs. It's okay. Being scared doesn't mean you don't want something. I swallowed hard, my voice barely audible. I do. A flicker of something darkened his eyes. Want, yes, but also restraint, steadiness, control barely held. He squeezed my hand lightly. Then we'll go at your pace, he said. But my pace changed in that moment, because for the first time in years I wanted to move toward someone instead of away, wanted to close distance instead of create it. Carefully, heart pounding, I stepped closer, just an inch, just enough to test if he'd retreat or if he wanted this too. His breath caught, not loudly, but enough to tell me he felt this. The trembling possibility hanging between us, like something about to break. Jonah, I whispered, surprised by how fragile my own voice sounded. Yeah, his reply was warm and rough-edged in a way I hadn't heard from him before, deeper, more affected. I didn't know how to say the thing I felt, the wanting, the fear, the ache of being seen and not mocked, noticed and not ridiculed, desired and not as a joke. So instead, I let myself do something simpler. I lifted my free hand and touched the front of his jacket, slowly, barely, my fingers curling slightly in the damp fabric. His eyes closed for half a second, as if my touch ignited something he'd been trying very hard to contain, something that threatened to overflow if he wasn't careful. You can touch me, he murmured, his voice strained with restraint. You don't have to ask. My breath stilled, my fingers curled tighter in the fabric of his jacket, and just like that, the air between us snapped with tension. Not explosive, not aggressive, but deep, slow. Burning like coals that had been smoldering for hours and were finally catching flame. It happened gradually, like a wave pulling me in inch by inch, one small step closer, then another, until Jonah's body was just inches from mine. Heat radiating from him, like a lit stove drawing your hands closer even when you know you shouldn't touch. He released my hand only so he could, slowly, deliberately, and rest his palm against my waist, his touch warm and firm and steady. The kind that asked but never forced, the kind that made my whole body come alive. My breath hitched, my pulse thudding against my ribs like a trapped bird. Alina, he whispered, his forehead nearly brushing mine, the space between us so small I could feel his breath on my lips. Tell me to stop if this is too much. I won't, I breathed, the words coming out before I could think them. His other hand rose, hesitant and reverent, and slid in, fingers threading through it gently like he was afraid to pull me too quickly into him, afraid to break whatever spell we were under. But I leaned in before he could decide for me, closing the last inch of space between us. That single movement broke whatever was holding him back. He exhaled sharply, a sound somewhere between relief and surrender, and then he kissed me. Not soft, not at first. It was careful for only 1 second before melting into something deeper, hotter, more urgent, like he'd been holding this back for weeks and couldn't anymore. His hand tightened at my waist, drawing me closer until our bodies pressed together in a way that made heat surge up my spine and settle low in my stomach. I gasped softly against his lips, surprised by the intensity, by how much I wanted them. He inhaled that sound like it was oxygen, like he needed it to survive, and kissed me harder, deeper, his thumb brushing the curve of my hip through my jacket in a way that made my knees weak. My fingers curled into his jacket, pulling him closer without thinking, kneading him nearer, and he groaned, a low, startled sound in the back of his throat, as if he hadn't expected me to want him back with the same intensity. He kissed like a man who'd been waiting years to find someone who didn't flinch away, slow then deeper, then slow again, like he wanted to savor every second, memorize every taste, hold on to this moment as long as possible. When my back brushed the brick wall beneath the awning, Jonah, not out of fear but restraint, his whole body going tense with the effort of holding back. I'm not trying to pin you, he whispered breathlessly against my mouth, his voice. But what if I want you to? I whispered back, the words escaping before I could stop them. Something in him broke, in a controlled, trembling way, like a dam cracking but not collapsing. His fingers tightened on my waist, his breath hitched sharply, and I felt his whole body shudder with restraint. Alina, he groaned, his voice lower now, rougher, you're going to undo me. He leaned in, bracing one hand beside my head on the wall without crushing me, letting me feel the strength in him, the control, the wanting he was fighting to keep gentle and careful. He kissed me again, slow at first, then deeper, his body aligning with mine like gravity demanded it, like we'd been orbiting each other for weeks and finally collided. His jacket slid off one shoulder from my tugging, his hand slid under the hem of my sleeve, finding my bare skin and making my whole body arch into him with a gasp I couldn't suppress. It wasn't graphic, it wasn't explicit, but it was hot in the way only real desire layered with vulnerability, raw and honest, and charged with months of unspoken want finally finding relief. He kissed me like he was learning me, mapping every response, every sound, every way I moved against him, and I kissed him like I was remembering something I thought I'd lost forever. The ability to want and be wanted without shame. When we finally parted, breathless and trembling, foreheads touching, his voice shook as he said, "Tell me you felt that too." I couldn't speak, words felt impossible, so I nodded instead, my breath coming in short, uneven gasps. He let his forehead rest against mine, both of us panting softly under the quiet hum of rain, the world around us faded and distant. "I don't want this to be a one-time moment," he whispered. "I don't want to be someone who scares you, then disappears." "You're not scaring me," I whispered back. "You're waking me up." His body pressed closer in response, subtle and controlled, but enough to show that my words hit him deeply, enough to make him exhale shakily against my temple. We stood there for what felt like a long time, wrapped in heat and cold mist, his thumb brushing slow circles against my waist, my fingers still tangled lightly in his hair, neither of us willing to break the spell first. He pulled back just enough to see my face fully, his eyes searching me not for doubt but for understanding, for confirmation that this was real. "Are you okay?" he asked again, quieter this time, more vulnerable. This time I didn't hesitate. "Yes. I think this is the first time in my life where wanting someone didn't feel dangerous." His expression softened so completely it nearly undid me, vulnerability and relief, and something that looked like wonder mixing in his eyes. He kissed my temple gently, like a promise, like a vow, like he was sealing something between us that neither of us could take back now. We walked again once the rain eased. This time our hands were intertwined like it was the most natural thing in the world, like we'd been doing this for years instead of minutes. Jonah spoke first, his voice quiet but steady. "I want to tell you something I've never said out loud." I looked at him, my heart already bracing. "What?" He swallowed, his voice growing smaller, more uncertain. "When I was younger, girls used to pretend to like me as a joke. They'd dare each other to flirt with me, or get me to blush, or tell me I looked cute, just to laugh about it behind my back." My heart clenched painfully. "So now," he continued quietly, "when I like someone, I get scared they'll think it's a game, or that I'm too young, or that it's not real, that I'm not worth taking seriously." I squeezed his hand tightly. "Jonah, I would never mock you." Eyes misty but not sad, just on. "I know that now. I think that's why I kept finding you. You walk like someone who would never hurt anyone, especially not someone who's already been hurt." I exhaled shakily. No one had ever seen me so clearly, seen past my armor to the soft, careful person underneath. He added, almost shy, "And older women feel safe to me, comforting, like home instead of a battlefield." Heat bloomed across my chest again, spreading through my whole. "You don't think I'm too old for you?" I whispered, the fear still there even after everything. He shook his head, then stopped walking and turned to face me fully, both his hands finding mine. "I think you're exactly right for me," he said, his voice steady and certain. "And I want to take my time getting to know everything you've kept hidden, because people never earned the right to see it." I felt tears prick my eyes, threatening to. Jonah reached up and brushed his thumb gently across my cheek, catching a tear I didn't know had fallen. "Let yourself be wanted, Alina," he whispered. "You deserve that." We ended up walking for nearly an hour, wrapped in quiet conversation, soft laughter, and the occasional squeeze of his hand around mine that made my heart stutter every time. He walked me home, slow and careful, not pushing for anything more than closeness, not asking to come up, just being present in a way that felt both rare and precious. Outside my apartment door, he hesitated, his eyes searching mine. "I don't want to rush you," he said softly. But can I soon? I nodded instantly. The answer easy now. Yes. His smile spread wide, beautiful and relieved, transforming his whole face. Okay, he breathed, his voice thick with emotion. He leaned in and kissed my cheek, gentle and warm, lingering just long enough for me to feel the heat of his lips, the tenderness in the gesture. Then he stepped back slowly, like leaving too fast might break something fragile between us. Good night, Alina. Good night, Jonah. He walked backward a few steps, still watching me like he couldn't quite believe this was real, then turned and disappeared down the hallway, and my heart followed him long after he. Have you ever met someone who saw parts of you were still afraid to look at? Would you have let him kiss you under the awning or run from the moment? And what would you do if someone younger looked at you like you were exactly what they'd been searching for? Don't forget to subscribe and share your own story in the comments. Grab a cup, your daily dose of delight.